Have you ever noticed how some places seem to breathe, even when no one's around? The old train station at the edge of town did just that. Its walls exhaled sighs of time. The air carried the faint scent of rust, rain, and forgotten goodbyes. Even silence had an echo there. Oliver liked it that way. He was 8 years old, small for his age, with curious brown eyes that always seemed to search for something beyond what he could see. While other kids played soccer or video games, Oliver preferred the company of quiet things: ticking clocks, chirping birds, the whistle of distant trains. His mother often said he was born with an old heart. Maybe she was right. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Oh, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching us from. We love to know that. Every afternoon, after school, Oliver rode his bike to the station. He'd lean it against the cracked brick wall and wander along the platform. He loved the hollow sound his footsteps made on the wooden boards, the way the echoes bounced back, as if the station were talking to him. Sometimes he'd close his eyes and imagine what it must have been like long ago. The crowd's chatter, the steam rising from locomotives, the conductor shouting, "All aboard!" He could almost hear it all if he listened hard enough. But these days, only 2 trains passed through, one early in the morning, one just before dusk, and neither stopped. The benches stood empty, the clock above the ticket window was frozen at 3:17, and ivy crawled through cracks where glass once gleamed. Oliver sat on his favorite bench near track 2. He pulled out his sketchbook and began to draw what he imagined the station looked like back in its golden years: bustling, alive, full of stories. He was so lost in thought he didn't notice the sound of footsteps behind him. "Mind if I sit here, son?" Oliver looked up. A man stood there, tall, thin, his gray coat hanging loosely from his shoulders. His hair was white, his face deeply lined, and in his trembling hand he held a pocket watch. "Sure," Oliver said softly, scooting over. The man sat down without another word. He opened the watch and stared at it. Tick, tick, tick. The sound filled the quiet like a heartbeat. "Is it broken?" Oliver asked after a while. The man smiled faintly. "No, it just runs on memories now." Oliver didn't understand, but he liked the sound of it. They sat in silence, watching the wind dance with the weeds along the tracks. Somewhere far off, a train's whistle cried, lonely and long. "Do you come here often?" the boy asked. "Every day," the man replied, his voice distant. "I'm waiting for someone." Oliver turned to look at him. "Who?" The man didn't answer. He just closed the pocket watch, placed it gently on his knee, and whispered, "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." The clock above them was still frozen, but for the first time in years, the station felt alive again. The next afternoon, Oliver returned to the station, his heart thumping with quiet excitement. He wasn't sure why, but something about the old man had stayed with him all night. His voice, his watch, and that strange sentence, "It runs on memories now." The station was as still as ever, drenched in golden sunlight that turned the dust into a gentle shimmer. A pigeon cooed from the roof, and the air smelled faintly of wet leaves. Oliver climbed onto his usual bench near track 2 and waited. Minutes passed. Then, from the far end of the platform, came the slow, steady tap of a cane. Mr. Bennet appeared again, wearing the same gray coat and hat, his silver pocket watch glinting faintly in the sun. He walked carefully, each step measured, as if he knew every creak in the wooden boards. "Good afternoon, sir," Oliver greeted, shy but cheerful. Mr. Bennet stopped, his eyes softening. "Ah, it's you again, the boy with the sketchbook." Oliver nodded. "I like it here." The old man smiled faintly. So did many others once. He sat down beside Oliver, laying his cane across his knees. For a while neither spoke. A breeze whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and old rain. Then Oliver pointed to the watch. "Can I see it?" Mr. Bennet hesitated. "It's very old." "I'll be careful," Oliver promised. The old man handed it over. The watch was heavy and smooth, its surface engraved with tiny initials, L and E. Inside, the glass face was slightly cracked, but the hands moved steadily. Each tick felt alive. "It's beautiful," Oliver whispered. "It belonged to my wife," Mr. Bennet said quietly. "She gave it to me the day I left for the war. Said it would keep me company until I came home." Oliver looked up. "Did she wait for you here, at this station?" The old man's eyes grew distant, his voice a fragile whisper. "She did. Every evening, right on that bench across the tracks, until the day the train stopped coming." Oliver didn't know what to say. He felt a lump in his throat, the kind that comes when something sad feels too big for words. Mr. Bennet gave a gentle smile, sensing the boy's silence. "She used to say time doesn't just pass. It collects, in places, in people." Oliver nodded slowly, his eyes drifting toward the clock above the ticket booth, still stuck at 3:17. "Maybe that's why the station feels full," the boy said, "like it's holding everyone's moments." The old man looked at him, truly looked, as if the boy had just spoken something sacred. "Yes," he murmured, "that's exactly it." They sat there as the sun began to set, painting the tracks in gold and shadow. The sound of the ticking watch blended with the soft rustle of wind, two rhythms, one old, one young, beating together in time. And somewhere deep within the station walls, the echoes seemed to stir, faint, hopeful, remembering. The next Saturday arrived with gray skies and the smell of rain. The streets glistened like mirrors as Oliver pedaled his bike through puddles, heading toward the station. He had tucked something special in his backpack, a sandwich, an apple, and a small thermos of tea. For Mr. Bennet, he thought proudly. When he arrived, the station seemed quieter than usual. The sound of the rain pattering against the tin roof echoed softly, steady as a lullaby. He looked toward track 2, half afraid the bench would be empty. But there he was, Mr. Bennet, sitting with his back straight, hat low, as if he'd been waiting forever. "Good morning," Oliver called, dropping his bike against the wall. The old man turned, his eyes lighting up faintly. "You came back? Not many people do." "I brought you something," Oliver said, holding out the sandwich and thermos. "It's just tea. My mom says it helps when it's cold." Mr. Bennet's lips curved into a tender smile. "Your mother raised a kind boy." He took the gift carefully, his hands trembling slightly. "Thank you." They sat quietly for a while, sipping tea and listening to the rain. A thin fog rolled through the open doors, making the platform shimmer like a dream. Then Oliver noticed something, a small piece of paper poking out from beneath the bench. Curious, he bent down and tugged it free. It was folded neatly, yellowed with age, the edges soft like fabric. "There's something here," he said, handing it to Mr. Bennet. The old man blinked in surprise. He took the note, and for a long moment he just stared at it. His fingers trembled as he unfolded the paper. The handwriting was faded but elegant, looping letters that seemed to dance across the page. He read silently, his eyes glistening. "What does it say?" Oliver asked gently. Mr. Bennet cleared his throat, his voice breaking. "It says, 'I'll wait for you every day at 3:17, until the last train comes.'" The boy looked up at the clock, still frozen. 3:17. Mr. Bennet's eyes filled with tears that he didn't bother to hide. "She wrote this," he whispered. "Evelyn, the day before she got sick. I thought it was gone forever." Oliver's small hand rested on the man's sleeve. "Maybe the station kept it safe for you." The old man nodded slowly, as if the thought itself brought warmth. Perhaps it did. For the first time, he let himself truly cry. And for the first time, Oliver didn't feel like a boy talking to an old man. He felt like a friend holding a piece of someone's heart. When the rain stopped, sunlight streamed through the windows, golden and soft. The air felt lighter, almost sacred. Mr. Bennet folded the letter carefully and slipped it into his pocket. "You have a gift, Oliver," he said. "You listen, not just with your ears, but with your heart. That's rare." Oliver smiled shyly. "Maybe that's why the station talks to me." Mr. Bennet chuckled softly, his voice trembling but warm. Then keep listening, my boy. Some echoes take a long time to reach us. The station clock remained still. Yet for both of them, time had just started moving again. The next day the sun returned, pale and gentle, as if the sky itself didn't want to disturb the peace left by yesterday's rain. Oliver biked back to the station, humming softly to himself. The pocket watch's rhythmic tick-tick still echoed in his mind. When he arrived, Mr. Bennett was already there, standing below the great station clock, the one frozen at 3:17. The old man's face was tilted upward, his eyes tracing the still hands like a man reading time's secrets. "Good morning, Mr. Bennett," Oliver called, hopping off his bike. The old man didn't turn immediately. "Good morning, my boy. Come, have a look at this." Oliver stepped beside him, following his gaze. The clock tower loomed above, weathered, cracked, but still beautiful. Faint spiderweb of rust surrounded its glass face. "Doesn't it bother you," Mr. Bennett asked softly, "that it never moves?" Oliver tilted his head. "Maybe it's waiting for something, like you." The old man smiled sadly. "Perhaps. Or maybe it's waiting for someone to help it remember how." He looked at Oliver then, a quiet spark in his eyes, the kind that comes from an idea just daring to be born. "Would you like to try fixing it?" he asked. Oliver blinked. "Me? But I don't know anything about clocks." "Neither do I," Mr. Bennett admitted with a faint chuckle. "But perhaps together we can wake it up." And so they began. The two of them scavenged through the dusty storage room behind the ticket booth, where cobwebs hung like curtains and old tools lay forgotten in wooden crates. The air smelled of oil and time. Oliver's fingers brushed over rusty gears, broken lanterns, even an old conductor's hat. "Look at this," the boy exclaimed, holding up a wrench half his size. Mr. Bennett laughed softly. That might just do. They climbed the narrow stairs that spiraled up to the clock's mechanism. The higher they went, the louder the echoes of their steps became, like the heartbeat of the station itself. At the top, they found the gears frozen in place, tangled with years of dust. Sunlight streamed through cracks in the wall, catching particles in a golden dance. "Poor thing," Mr. Bennett murmured, touching the great wheel. "All this time and no one cared to help it move." Oliver took a rag and began to wipe the gears, his small hands steady. "We'll help it now." It took hours, oiling, cleaning, tightening, guessing. Sometimes the old man's hands shook too much and Oliver would take over. Sometimes Oliver grew frustrated and Mr. Bennett would hum an old tune until calm returned. Finally, as the afternoon sun began to sink, the boy turned one last screw. Then, click. A sound, a shift. The clock's great pendulum twitched, once, twice, then began to swing. Slow, deliberate, alive. Oliver gasped. "It's moving." Mr. Bennett stared, tears glistening in his eyes. "After all these years, she's keeping time again." They stood in silence, listening to the gentle tick-tock, tick-tock, echoing through the station, mixing with the wind and the faint call of a train in the distance. Oliver grinned. "What time is it?" Mr. Bennett looked at the hands. 3:17, he said. "Still." They laughed together, the boy's bright and the old man's trembling, as the clock kept ticking, slowly learning once more how to remember time. The following Sunday arrived wrapped in sunlight and birdsong. Oliver could hardly sit still at breakfast. He had barely touched his toast before dashing out the door, his sketchbook under one arm, and a crumpled note from his mother reminding him to be home before dinner. The train station shimmered in the morning light, the glass roof glowing softly. For the first time in years, the great clock ticked. The rhythmic tick-tock, tick-tock filled the air like a slow, patient heartbeat. Even the pigeons seemed to listen. Mr. Bennett was already there, seated on the bench near track 2, his silver watch resting open in his palm. But there was something different about him today. A calmness, almost joy. "It's working," Oliver said proudly, pointing to the tower. Yes, Mr. Bennet replied with a tender smile. She's breathing again. They sat together for a while, soaking in the quiet. A gentle breeze carried the scent of lilacs from the nearby hill. Then, from somewhere in the far end of the station came a faint sound. A soft, fragile tune played on something old. Oliver turned his head. "Do you hear that?" Mr. Bennet nodded, his eyes narrowing. "It can't be." They followed the melody step by step until they reached the small waiting room behind the ticket booth. There, beneath a dusty sheet, sat an upright piano. Its keys yellowed, one leg cracked, but still standing with quiet dignity. Oliver pulled off the sheet, sending dust swirling through the sunlight. "Wow," he whispered. "Can it still play?" Mr. Bennet ran a wrinkled hand across the keys. The first touch produced a low, uneven note, tired, but not gone. He pressed another. Then another. Slowly, hesitantly, a tune began to form. It was the same song Oliver had heard him hum days ago. Soft, trembling, full of memory. "That's beautiful," Oliver said. Mr. Bennet smiled faintly, his voice breaking. It was her song, Evelyn's. She played it every evening while waiting for me. I used to think the sound would reach me across the sea. The boy stood silently beside him, watching as the old man's hands, fragile but graceful, danced over the keys. The melody wove through the air like a sigh. When it ended, the station fell utterly silent. The sound seemed to linger long after the last note faded, resting gently against the walls. Oliver broke the silence. "Can you teach me?" Mr. Bennet looked at him, eyes bright with something between sadness and gratitude. "You really want to learn?" Oliver nodded. "If I learn her song, then she won't be forgotten." The old man's lips trembled. He reached out and placed the boy's small fingers on the keys. "Then let's begin." That afternoon, laughter and music filled the empty station. Birds perched along the roof to listen, and even the wind seemed to pause. The echoes that once belonged to sorrow now carried something new. Hope. When the day ended and the piano's final notes drifted into dusk, Oliver looked up at the clock. It had moved again, 1 minute past 3:17. He smiled. "See, Mr. Bennet, time's listening." The old man laughed softly. Maybe it finally remembered the tune. Days slipped by gently, like pages in a well-loved book. The old station, once silent and forgotten, now hummed with a quiet kind of life. The clock ticked faithfully, the piano sang each afternoon, and the laughter of an unlikely pair, one young, one old, danced through the halls. Oliver and Mr. Bennet had fallen into a rhythm. Each day after school, the boy arrived with a smile, and together they played Evelyn's song on the piano. Sometimes Oliver missed notes, sometimes Mr. Bennet's fingers trembled too much to guide him, but neither minded. The music wasn't meant to be perfect. It was meant to be remembered. One afternoon, as sunlight spilled across the wooden floorboards, Oliver noticed something sticking out from behind the piano. A small, weathered frame coated in dust. He knelt down and carefully pulled it free. "Mr. Bennet," he said softly, "look what I found." The old man turned. When his eyes met the photo, he froze. It was a black and white picture, edges curled with age. In it, a young soldier stood on the very same station platform, his uniform neat, his arm around a smiling woman in a white dress. Behind them, the clock showed 3:17. Mr. Bennet's hand trembled as he took the frame. That's us," he whispered. "The day I left." Oliver looked closer. "You look happy." "We were," he said, his voice cracking. "She brought her father's camera that morning. Said she wanted to capture the moment before the world changed." He traced Evelyn's face with a shaking finger. "We didn't know then that this station would become our forever place." Oliver sat beside him, unsure what to say. "You kept her photo here all this time?" "I thought I'd lost it," Mr. Bennet said, blinking rapidly. "But perhaps the station was keeping it safe for us until the right hands found it." The boy smiled faintly. "Like the letter?" "Yes," Mr. Bennet said, "like the letter." The old man set the frame gently on the piano beside his pocket watch. For a long time they both stared at it, the soldier and the woman frozen in a moment that never aged, their love preserved between dust and silence. Oliver finally asked, "Do you ever wish you could go back?" Mr. Bennet smiled wistfully. "Sometimes. But then I realize the past only lives because we remember it. And today, you, this music, this station, you're helping me remember her in a new way." Oliver's eyes brightened. "Then maybe that's why we met." Mr. Bennet looked at him and nodded slowly. "Yes, my boy. Maybe time decided it was time for me to stop waiting and start remembering." The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the platform. A distant train horn echoed through the valley, low and haunting, fading into the horizon. Mr. Bennet stood, resting a hand on Oliver's shoulder. "Come," he said softly. "Let's take their picture's place, so one day someone else will find us here and know that love still lingers." Oliver grinned. "I'll bring my mom's camera tomorrow." And as they left the station that evening, the photo on the piano seemed to glow faintly in the amber light, as if the two souls inside it were smiling still. It was a morning painted in silver mist. The air hung still, the world hushed as though holding its breath. The station clock read 6:42 when Mr. Bennet unlocked the door. The scent of rain lingered, soft, clean, full of memory. Oliver wasn't there yet. He was never late, but Mr. Bennet didn't mind. The boy had school, a life full of beginnings. The old man smiled at the thought and walked slowly down the platform, his cane clicking rhythmically against the worn boards. He stopped by the piano, gently tracing its polished edge. The photograph still sat proudly beside his pocket watch. The sight filled him with warmth. Evelyn's smile seemed brighter that morning. He sat down at the piano bench and began to play, softly, uncertainly at first. The melody wove through the empty air, tender and cracked with age. Halfway through, he closed his eyes and whispered, "Good morning, my love." For the first time in decades, he didn't feel alone. The music drifted through the station, out into the fog and over the silent tracks. Birds perched along the wires listened, still as statues. The clock ticked gently toward 7 And then, something strange. In the distance, faint but unmistakable, came the sound of a train. Mr. Bennet frowned. "Impossible," he murmured. The line had been closed for years. No trains had passed through since before Oliver was born. The sound grew louder, the slow, rhythmic thundering of steel on steel, the echo of a horn cutting through mist. He stood and stepped toward the platform edge, his heart pounding. Through the fog, a shape began to form, a locomotive gleaming faintly under the pale morning light. Steam hissed from its sides, white and ghostly. The engine was old-fashioned, the kind from his youth. And though his eyes were weak, he swore he could see a familiar figure standing by the open door of the first carriage. A woman. She wore a light-colored dress that moved gently in the wind. Her hair was pinned the way Evelyn used to wear it. She raised a hand and smiled. That same smile from the photograph. Mr. Bennet's cane slipped from his hand. "Evelyn?" His voice was barely a whisper. The horn sounded again, softer this time, almost like a sigh. The door remained open, waiting. He looked down at his trembling hands, then back at the station. The clock above him showed 7:03, the exact time the old trains used to arrive. He felt a strange calm settle over him, as if the world had stopped turning for just a moment. A gust of wind swept through the station, carrying the scent of lilies and rain. Mr. Bennet took a slow step forward. His heart felt light, so light that even his years seemed to fall away. He glanced back once more at the piano, the photograph, the empty chair where Oliver usually sat. "Thank you, my boy," he said softly. "You helped me find my way home." And then he turned toward the train. The fog swallowed the platform whole. When Oliver arrived an hour later, the mist had lifted. The piano stood still, the clock ticking steadily. On the bench sat the photograph and the pocket watch, open, stopped at exactly 7:03, but Mr. Bennet was gone. Oliver stood silently for a long time, the weight of something sacred pressing gently on his chest. He didn't cry. Instead, he walked to the piano and began to play Evelyn's song, slowly, tenderly, just as Mr. Bennet had taught him. The notes rose through the empty station like sunlight, and for a fleeting second, he thought he heard the distant echo of a train disappearing into the horizon. The morning after Mr. Bennet's disappearance, the station felt emptier than ever. Oliver sat quietly on the piano bench, his small hands resting on the keys. He didn't dare play yet. The silence between the notes was too heavy, like the air just before a storm. He looked around. Everything was the same. And yet, everything was different. The photograph of Mr. Bennet and the lady with kind eyes still sat beside the pocket watch, but now a thin sheet of paper peeked out from beneath it. The edges were yellowed, the handwriting elegant and delicate. Oliver reached for it with trembling fingers. The paper smelled faintly of old books and lavender. At the top, in neat cursive, it read, "For the one who hears the music after I'm gone." Oliver's throat tightened. He began to read. "My dear friend, if you are reading this, it means the day has come when my train finally arrived. Don't be sad. Trains never vanish. They just travel to places unseen. Every morning I sat in this station. I thought of the songs I never finished and the words I never said. Then one day, a boy came along. A boy who reminded me that the world still hums with life, laughter, and the rhythm of tomorrow. That boy was you. You gave me back the sound of hope, the courage to play again, the faith to believe that even broken hearts can make music. When you play, Oliver, remember this: the world listens, even when it seems no one is there. Music travels farther than trains ever could. One day you'll be grown, and maybe this station will be nothing more than dust and memory. But if you ever hear the faint echo of a violin or the soft chime of a distant whistle, that'll be me, reminding you that no goodbye is forever. Thank you, my boy, you helped me go home. With love, Arthur Bennet." By the time Oliver finished reading, tears blurred the ink on the page. He folded the letter carefully and pressed it against his chest. He didn't understand everything, not yet, but he knew the old man wasn't truly gone. Somewhere beyond the fog, in a place made of light and melody, Mr. Bennet was still playing. Oliver stood and looked out onto the empty tracks. The air shimmered in the sunlight, and for a moment he thought he saw a figure waving from the distance. A man in a gray coat, smiling softly. He waved back. Then, with a deep breath, he sat at the piano again. His fingers hesitated over the keys before pressing the first note, gentle, pure, and trembling with emotion. He played the melody exactly as Mr. Bennet had taught him, but this time he added his own ending, bright, hopeful, like dawn breaking after a long night. As the last note faded, a warm wind swept through the station, rustling the pages of the letter. Oliver smiled through his tears. Somewhere, he knew, Mr. Bennet was listening. Days turned into weeks, yet the memory of that morning, the letter, the melody, the whisper of the wind, never left Oliver's heart. He still came to the train station every Saturday with his mother, though the old piano now sat quietly in the corner, covered with a thin layer of dust. Sometimes Oliver would lift the cover and run his fingers along the keys, just to feel them again. He didn't always play, but when he did, the notes floated softly through the air like gentle raindrops, tender and full of longing. One afternoon, while the autumn sun poured through the glass roof, Oliver noticed something unusual. The old bench where Mr. Bennet used to sit had been moved slightly, revealing a small wooden box hidden underneath. The box was worn, with initials carved faintly on the lid. A.B. Oliver's heart skipped a beat. He lifted the box carefully and opened it. Inside was a faded train ticket, a silver violin string coiled neatly, and a folded sheet of music titled, "The Train of Tomorrow." The notes were written in Mr. Bennet's precise handwriting, but the last line was blank, as if waiting for someone to finish it. Oliver felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. He touched the page gently and whispered, "You left me one last song." He spent the following week practicing it at home, using the little keyboard his mother had saved up to buy. Every night before bed, he played the melody, sometimes softly, sometimes louder, until he could feel Mr. Bennet's presence beside him, nodding along. By the next Saturday, Oliver made a decision. He wore his best shirt and brought the music sheet to the station. A small crowd had gathered that day, travelers waiting for their trains, vendors, even a few of the station staff who had once ignored the old violinist. Oliver stood by the piano, heart pounding, and began to play The Train of Tomorrow. At first, the melody was slow and nostalgic, echoing Mr. Bennet's old tunes. But as Oliver reached the final unfinished line, he paused, then smiling softly, added his own ending. It was bright, full of life, like the whistle of a new train ready to depart. When he finished, the entire station was silent. Then came gentle applause, warm and sincere. His mother hugged him tightly, whispering, "He'd be so proud of you." Oliver looked up toward the high windows. For a brief second, sunlight broke through the clouds, bathing the piano in golden light. The silver violin string in his pocket seemed to hum faintly, as if vibrating with the music still lingering in the air. Somewhere, he imagined, Mr. Bennet was boarding his next train, one that led not to another town, but to forever. And this time, he wasn't leaving alone. Because Oliver's music would travel with him, a bridge between generations, a promise that every melody, once played from the heart, never truly ends. Years passed like soft whispers through the station. The paint on the walls faded, the tracks rusted gently, and the sun rose and fell in quiet rhythm. But Oliver, now taller, older, with the same curious brown eyes, still came every Saturday. The piano remained in its corner, polished and waiting, a silent witness to the passage of time. The station had changed. Children played where benches once sat empty. Travelers laughed, their voices mingling with the soft hum of the restored clock, now ticking faithfully past 3:17. And yet, amidst the bustle, Oliver felt the old magic linger, a thread connecting past and present, memory and hope. He ran his fingers along the keys, and the melody of The Train of Tomorrow filled the air. It was the same song he had played as a boy, the song Mr. Bennet had left unfinished. But now the final notes carried his own voice, tender, alive, full of gratitude. As the last note faded, a gentle breeze swept through the station. It rustled the sheet music, lifted a loose scarf from a bench, and brushed Oliver's cheek. For a fleeting moment he felt a presence, warm, familiar, and comforting. "Hello, Oliver," a whisper seemed to say. He closed his eyes. For a heartbeat, he saw the old man, silver watch glinting, standing by the tracks, smiling. Evelyn's photograph rested beside him, and together they nodded, approving as if to say, "You remembered. You carried the music forward." Oliver smiled, tears brimming. He realized then that Mr. Bennet had been right. The station, the music, even the echoes of old trains, they never truly left. They lived in hearts that remembered, in melodies passed down, in moments shared between generations. He glanced at the clock. The hands moved steadily now, a symbol of time healed, of life continuing. He imagined Mr. Bennet on his eternal journey, riding a train toward light, free from waiting, carrying the echoes of a life filled with love and memory. Oliver turned to a group of children playing by the tracks. He beckoned them closer and began to teach them the song. Their laughter mingled with the piano notes, rising and falling in a gentle symphony. And in that harmony he felt it clearly. Every friendship, every goodbye, every shared moment, they lingered. They shaped the present, and they whispered to the future. The station had learned to listen, and so had he. As Oliver played, the train station, once silent, now alive with echoes, reminded him of one eternal truth: love, memory, and music endure. They travel farther than any train, beyond time, beyond absence. The piano's notes drifted through the station, soft and endless, carrying the heartbeats of all those who had ever walked the platform. And somewhere, beyond sight and beyond time, Mr. Bennet smiled, because echoes once made never fade.